Welcome to the Billionaire's Choice. Subscribe and turn on notifications to enjoy more heartwarming stories of love and destiny. Let us know where you're watching from, and let's begin today's story. Sometimes the person who changes your life forever is the one you were never supposed to message. At 10:50 p.m., Savannah Pierce sat alone at the tiny kitchen table in her one-bedroom apartment, staring at an empty can of baby formula. The overhead light flickered softly, casting pale shadows across the room. Outside, rain tapped against the window in uneven rhythms, and somewhere down the hall an old television murmured through a neighbor's wall. Her 8-month-old daughter, Lily, had been asleep less than an hour. Now the baby was crying again. Not a loud cry, not a tantrum, just that tired, hungry sound every parent recognizes immediately. Savannah closed her eyes for a moment. She knew what that cry meant. She picked up the can and shook it one more time, even though she already knew it was empty. Nothing. Not a single scoop left. Her stomach tightened. She opened the cabinet above the sink. Empty. She checked the pantry. Empty. She even searched the diaper bag hanging on the chair. Nothing. The formula was gone. Completely gone. Her phone sat face down beside a stack of unpaid bills. Rent was due in 4 days. The electric company had already sent a warning notice. Her checking account balance was $4.13. Savannah swallowed hard. 3 months earlier, she had still believed things would improve. She had taken extra shifts at the pharmacy. She had sold jewelry she no longer wore. She had skipped meals when money became tight. Somehow she always found a way. Tonight felt different. Tonight there was no backup plan. Lily's cries grew louder from the bedroom. Savannah stood quickly and hurried down the short hallway. The baby lay in her crib with tear-filled blue eyes and tiny hands reaching upward. "Hey, sweetheart," Savannah whispered, lifting her gently. "Mama's here." She rocked slowly beside the window. The city lights shimmered through the rain outside. Lily rested her head against Savannah's shoulder, trusting completely that everything would be okay. That trust nearly broke Savannah's heart, because for the first time, she wasn't sure it would be. 20 minutes later, after Lily finally drifted back to sleep, Savannah sat on the edge of her couch staring at her contacts list. She hated asking for help. Hated it. Every instinct told her to figure things out herself. But pride didn't feed babies. She scrolled through old messages. Former coworkers. Distant relatives. People she hadn't spoken to in months. Her thumb hovered over several names before pulling away again. Midnight was approaching. Nobody wanted desperate messages this late. Then she stopped on a contact she barely remembered saving months ago. The name looked familiar. Maybe from work. Maybe from a customer loyalty account. Maybe from somewhere else entirely. She couldn't even remember. Her hands trembled as she opened a new text. For several seconds, she stared at the blinking cursor. Then she typed, "I'm so sorry to ask this. Could I borrow $50 for baby formula? I can pay you back Friday." She read it twice. The message looked pathetic. Embarrassing. Small. But it was the truth. She hesitated another 10 seconds before pressing send. The text disappeared. Savannah immediately regretted it. She tossed the phone onto the couch and buried her face in her hands. What was she doing? Messaging random people in the middle of the night? This was ridiculous. Humiliating. She stood up and walked toward the kitchen. Then her phone vibrated. Savannah froze. One reply? Her pulse quickened. She grabbed the phone and unlocked the screen. The message contained only 4 words. "What's your address?" She blinked. Once. Twice. That was it. No questions. No suspicion. No lecture. Just 4 words. Savannah assumed the contact was someone she knew better than she remembered. Maybe an old customer. Maybe a friend of a friend. Maybe someone who understood what it was like to struggle. Relief flooded through her chest so quickly she nearly cried. Without thinking, she typed her address and hit send. The message delivered instantly. Then silence returned. The rain continued tapping against the glass. The apartment remained small, quiet, and uncertain. Savannah set the phone down and exhaled slowly. She had no idea that hundreds of miles away, in a penthouse overlooking the city skyline, a billionaire named Declan Whitmore was staring at her message. And she definitely had no idea that before the night was over, he would be standing outside her door. 600 feet above the sleeping city, Declan Whitmore stood alone beside a floor-to-ceiling window, watching rain slide down the glass in silver streaks. The penthouse was silent except for the faint hum of climate control and the occasional vibration of traffic far below. Most people imagine billionaires spent their nights at glamorous parties, surrounded by friends and luxury. Declan knew better. Luxury did not make a room feel less empty. At 38, he had everything money could buy and almost nothing he actually wanted. The city knew him as a business genius. Financial magazines called him one of the most influential entrepreneurs in America. Investors followed every move he made. Employees admired him. Reporters chased him. Yet tonight, like most nights recently, he was standing alone in a dark penthouse, unable to sleep. A crystal glass of untouched, sparkling water sat on the kitchen island. His suit jacket rested over a chair. Several business reports waited open on a tablet nearby. He had not read a single page. His mind kept drifting back to the same realization that had followed him for months. The more successful he became, the fewer people seemed interested in who he actually was. They cared about access, connections, opportunities, money. Earlier that evening, he had ignored 3 invitations to social events and 2 calls from people who suddenly wanted to reconnect after reading about his latest acquisition. None of it felt genuine anymore. His phone vibrated softly against the countertop. Declan barely glanced at it. Another message, another request, another pitch. That was usually how it went. He picked up the phone anyway. The unfamiliar number caught his attention first. Then he read the message. Once, then again. I am so sorry to ask this. Could I borrow $50 for baby formula? I can pay you back Friday. Declan frowned slightly. There was something unusual about it. No dramatic story. No attempt to impress him. No manipulation. No mention of emergencies beyond the simple request itself. Just $50. The amount almost seemed insignificant. Most scams asked for hundreds, sometimes thousands. This person was asking for less than the cost of lunch in one of his company cafeterias. He should have ignored it. Every rational part of his brain told him to do exactly that. Yet he kept staring at the screen. He imagined someone sitting awake somewhere, debating whether to send that message. Imagine the embarrassment hidden behind the words, the apology before the request, the promise to pay it back. Those details felt real. Declan typed a reply before he could overthink it. What is your address? The response came less than 30 seconds later. The address matched a residential building, not an empty lot or commercial property. An apartment complex on the west side of the city. He looked at the address, then at the rain outside, then back at the message. He considered calling his executive assistant first, then dismissed the idea. It was nearly midnight, and involving someone else would only slow everything down. He searched the apartment address online, confirmed it was a real residential building, and decided to handle it himself. Most people in his position would have sent the money electronically and moved on. Instead, Declan found himself opening a weather app and checking how long nearby stores would remain open. 20 minutes later, he was standing inside a 24-hour pharmacy wearing a dark jacket and baseball cap. The cashier never recognized him. He moved through the aisles pushing a shopping basket. Baby formula, diapers, infant medicine, baby wipes, a few groceries, fresh fruit, bread, milk, eggs. He paused beside the formula shelf for several seconds, uncertain which brand to buy. Finally, a young mother nearby noticed his confusion and pointed toward the same formula she was purchasing. That one is usually a safe choice, she said kindly. Declan smiled. Thank you. By the time he reached the register, the basket was full. The cashier scanned everything without comment. The total appeared on the screen. Declan barely looked at it. What surprised him was not the cost. It was the realization that he felt more purposeful standing in that checkout line than he had during most board meetings that month. 15 minutes later, he loaded the bags into the back seat of his SUV. Rain drummed softly against the windshield as he entered the address into the navigation system. The route appeared instantly, 23 minutes away. He sat there for a moment with both hands resting on the steering wheel. This was ridiculous. Completely irrational. He did not know the woman. He did not know whether the story was true. Yet something inside him refused to drive back home. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe it was the memory of growing up with a single mother who worked 2 jobs and never complained even when life became difficult. Whatever the reason, Declan shifted the vehicle into drive. The city lights blurred across the wet streets as he headed west through the rain. And for the first time in a very long time, he felt as though he was driving towards something that actually mattered. At 12:21 a.m., Savannah was sitting on the couch with her phone in her hand when she heard 3 soft knocks at the door. She froze. For a moment, she wondered if she had imagined them. The apartment building was usually quiet this late at night, except for the occasional elevator noise or footsteps in the hallway. Then the knock came again. Calm, patient, real. Savannah glanced toward the bedroom where Lily was finally sleeping. Her heart began to race. Nobody visited her after midnight. Nobody even knew she needed help tonight. Slowly, she stood and walked toward the door. The hallway light slipped through the crack beneath it. She looked through the peephole and saw a tall man standing outside, holding several shopping bags. Rainwater still glistened on his dark jacket. He looked completely out of place in the worn apartment corridor. Savannah unlocked the door halfway. "Can I help you?" she asked cautiously. The stranger lifted one of the bags slightly. "I got your message." For a second, she simply stared at him. "My message?" The man nodded. "The formula." Her eyes moved from his face to the bags. Formula. Diapers. Groceries. More supplies than she could afford in weeks. Savannah blinked rapidly, trying to process what she was seeing. "You came here?" she asked. "I was nearby," he said, though that was not entirely true. "I thought this might help." Savannah looked at the bags again, then back at him. "I thought you were going to send $50. A faint smile touched the corner of his mouth. This seemed easier. She opened the door wider. "Please come in before you catch a cold." Declan stepped inside. The apartment was small but spotless. A second-hand couch sat against one wall. Children's books were stacked neatly beside a rocking chair. The kitchen occupied one corner of the room. Everything suggested someone doing their best with very little. Savannah cleared a space on the counter while he set down the bags. One by one, she removed the items. Formula, baby wipes, fresh fruit, bread, milk, eggs, even a small stuffed rabbit tucked between the groceries. Her throat tightened. "This is way more than $50. "Probably," Declan admitted. "You should not have done this." "Maybe not." Savannah looked down at the formula container in her hands. For a moment, she seemed close to tears, but she quickly blinked them away. "Thank you," she whispered. "You have no idea what this means." Before Declan could respond, a soft cry drifted from the bedroom. Savannah immediately turned. "That is Lily." She disappeared down the hallway. A minute later, she returned carrying a sleepy baby wrapped in a pale pink blanket. Lily rubbed her eyes and stared curiously at the stranger. Declan found himself unexpectedly smiling. "She is beautiful," he said. Savannah's expression softened. "She is the best thing that ever happened to me." Lily reached one tiny hand toward the stuffed rabbit still sitting on the counter. Savannah laughed quietly. "Looks like she already picked her favorite gift." The sound filled the apartment with warmth. Declan realized he could not remember the last time he had heard a genuine laugh in his own home. Then Savannah surprised him. She searched through a kitchen drawer, found a notepad, and began writing. "What are you doing?" Declan asked. "Making sure I can pay you back." She tore off the sheet and handed it to him. Written neatly across the page was a promise. Every dollar listed. Every item accounted for. Signed and dated. Declan stared at the paper. Most people would have accepted the help and moved on. Some would have asked for more. Savannah was creating a repayment plan at 12:30 in the morning. "You do not have to do this," he said. "Yes, I do." Her voice was gentle but firm. "I asked for help. I did not ask for charity." For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Declan carefully folded the paper and slipped it into his jacket pocket. Neither of them knew it yet, but that simple handwritten note would become one of the most important things he owned. The next morning, Savannah woke after only a few hours of sleep. For a moment, she thought the previous night had been a dream. Then she saw the grocery bags lined neatly across her kitchen counter. The formula container sat beside the coffee maker. The stuffed rabbit rested in Lily's playpen. It had all been real. She lifted Lily from her crib and carried her into the kitchen. The baby immediately spotted the rabbit and smiled. The sight warmed Savannah's heart in a way she had not expected. While Lily drank her bottle, Savannah prepared a simple breakfast and checked her phone before heading to work. There were no new messages from the stranger. Somehow that disappointed her more than it should have. She shook off the thought and focused on her day. By 8 o'clock, she was standing behind the pharmacy register helping customers fill prescriptions and answering questions about cold medicine. The hours passed slowly. Every so often, she found herself remembering the calm expression on the man's face. Most people who offered help expected recognition. gratitude, sometimes even attention. He had asked for none of those things. Around noon, her coworker Melissa walked up holding a cup of coffee. "You look different today," she said. Savannah glanced up. "Different how?" "Less worried." Savannah laughed softly. "Maybe I finally slept." It was not entirely true, but she let the explanation stand. Later that afternoon, while Lily stayed with a trusted neighbor, Savannah finished her shift and returned home carrying a small notebook. She sat at the kitchen table and carefully calculated every item the stranger had purchased. Formula, diapers, groceries, baby supplies. She estimated the total and added it to the repayment note she had already written. The number made her stomach tighten. It would take weeks to repay, maybe months. Still, she intended to do it. As she closed the notebook, someone knocked on the apartment door. Savannah frowned. She was not expecting anyone. When she opened it, she nearly dropped the pen in her hand. Declan stood in the hallway holding a paper bag. "You are back," she said before she could stop herself. A faint smile appeared. "I was in the neighborhood." She looked skeptical. "Twice." "Apparently." He handed her the bag. Inside was a small portable heater. Savannah stared at it. "What is this?" "Last night, I noticed your heating vent was barely working." "You noticed that?" "I noticed things." Savannah laughed despite herself. "That sounds mysterious. Or annoying. Maybe both." For the first time, the conversation felt easy. Natural. Declan glanced toward the old wall heater across the room. "Has that thing been making that noise long?" As if on cue, the heater rattled loudly. Savannah groaned. 3 months. And your landlord has not fixed it. He keeps promising. Declan stepped closer and examined the unit. "Do you mind if I take a look?" "Are you secretly a repairman?" "No, good. Because that would be an extremely strange coincidence." 20 minutes later, Declan had tightened a loose access panel and reduced most of the rattling. "It should stay quiet for now," he said. "But your landlord still needs to replace the unit." The apartment felt noticeably quieter. Savannah folded her arms and stared at him. "Okay, who are you?" He raised an eyebrow. "A guy who knows how to use a screwdriver. Most people do not drive across the city at midnight with baby supplies and then return the next day to fix heaters." For a second, Declan looked as though he might answer honestly. Instead, he simply said, "Maybe I had some free time." Savannah was not convinced. Neither was he. Yet neither pushed further. Lily crawled across the floor toward him carrying the stuffed rabbit. When she reached him, she lifted it with both hands. Declan accepted it solemnly. "I think that means she likes you," Savannah said. Looking down at the smiling baby, Declan felt something shift quietly inside him. Something he had not felt in a very long time. And for reasons he could not explain, he found himself already wondering when he would see them again. Over the next 2 weeks, something unusual happened. Declan kept finding reasons to return. Sometimes he arrived with practical excuses. A replacement light bulb for the kitchen fixture. A recommendation for a pediatric clinic. A toolbox because he claimed the apartment building maintenance was unreliable. Other times he showed up with no excuse at all. Savannah noticed the pattern long before she said anything. One Saturday afternoon, Lily was sitting on the living room floor surrounded by colorful plastic blocks while Savannah folded laundry on the couch. A knock sounded at the door. Savannah smiled before she even stood up. "You know," she called through the apartment, "most people call before showing up." When she opened the door, Declan was holding a paper bag from a local bakery. "I did text." Savannah checked her phone. Sure enough, there was a message sent 10 minutes earlier. She laughed. "Apparently, I am the last person in America who forgets to check her messages." Declan stepped inside. Lily immediately recognized him and crawled across the floor with surprising speed. "Well," Declan said as he crouched down, "that is either a very warm welcome or she thinks I brought snacks." Savannah pointed toward the bakery bag. "Probably snacks." The apartment filled with an easy comfort neither of them expected. They talked while Lily played nearby. Savannah learned that Declan traveled often for work. Declan learned that Savannah loved old mystery novels and once dreamed of becoming a teacher before life took a different path. The conversations never felt forced. Hours passed without either noticing. What surprised Savannah most was how carefully Declan listened. Most people waited for their turn to speak. Declan paid attention to every detail. He remembered things. Small things. Her favorite coffee. Lily's nap schedule. The fact that Savannah always double-checked the apartment lock before bed because the building made her nervous. One rainy evening, Savannah returned from work exhausted. A shipment delay at the pharmacy had caused chaos all day. Her feet hurt. Her head ached. Lily had chosen that particular evening to be unusually energetic. Savannah was trying to prepare dinner while balancing the baby on one hip when another knock sounded. Declan stepped inside carrying takeout containers. One look at Savannah told him everything. "Long day?" he asked. She laughed weakly. "That obvious?" "Very." Without another word, he took Lily into his arms. The baby immediately settled against his shoulder. Savannah stared for a moment. "How do you do that?" "I have no idea. I spend all day with her, and she still refuses to cooperate half the time." Declan smiled. "Maybe she is being polite because I am a guest." Savannah doubted that explanation. During dinner, she watched him make Lily laugh with ridiculous faces and exaggerated voices. Something about the sight touched her deeply. She had become so accustomed to carrying every responsibility alone that seeing someone willingly share even a small part of the burden felt almost unreal. Across the room, Declan experienced a different realization. He had spent years attending executive dinners, charity galas, and exclusive events filled with influential people. Yet sitting at a tiny kitchen table eating takeout beside a woman and a baby somehow felt more meaningful than any of them. Later that night, after Lily had fallen asleep, Savannah walked Declan to the door. "You know," she said quietly, "I never properly thanked you. You thanked me several times. Not for the groceries." He paused. "Then for what?" Savannah looked down briefly before meeting his eyes again. "For showing up." The words were simple, honest. Declan felt them more deeply than he expected, because the truth was that nobody had ever thanked him for simply being present. For a few seconds neither spoke. The hallway remained silent around them. Then Declan smiled softly. "You are welcome, Savannah." As he walked toward the elevator, neither of them realized how much those small moments had already begun changing their lives. 3 weeks passed, and life settled into a rhythm Savannah had almost forgotten was possible. The bills were still there. The apartment was still small. She still worked long shifts at the pharmacy. But the constant feeling of drowning had eased. Somehow, knowing that someone cared made every burden feel lighter. One Thursday afternoon, her manager approached her near the end of her shift. "Savannah, one of our corporate partners is hosting a community fundraiser this weekend. They are looking for volunteers. It pays a small stipend, and honestly, they could use someone dependable." Savannah hesitated. Extra money was always welcome. "What would I be doing?" "Greeting guests, helping with registration, simple stuff." She nodded. "I can do that." Saturday arrived bright and clear after days of rain. A neighbor agreed to watch Lily for the evening, and Savannah borrowed a navy blue dress from Melissa. It was simple but elegant enough for the occasion. Standing in front of the mirror, she almost did not recognize herself. By 6 o'clock, she arrived at one of the most beautiful hotels she had ever seen. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. Guests moved through the grand ballroom dressed in tailored suits and designer gowns. Savannah suddenly felt out of place. She adjusted her volunteer badge and reminded herself that she was there to work, not to impress anyone. For the first hour, everything went smoothly. She greeted attendees, answered questions, and directed guests toward the registration tables. Then the ballroom lights dimmed slightly. A voice echoed through the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight as we celebrate another year of community outreach and charitable impact." Applause filled the room. Savannah barely paid attention while organizing name tags. This foundation would not exist without the vision and leadership of one extraordinary individual. More applause followed. "Please welcome the founder of Whitmore Global Industries and the Whitmore Family Foundation, billionaire entrepreneur Declan Whitmore." Savannah froze. The name hit her first. Whitmore. Her hand stopped moving. Slowly, she looked toward the stage. The room erupted into applause as a familiar figure walked into the spotlight. Declan. Her Declan. The man who fixed heaters. The man who carried groceries into her apartment. The man who sat on her couch, making Lily laugh. He looked completely different standing beneath the lights. Confident. Polished. Powerful. Giant screens displayed images behind him. Magazine covers. Business awards. Headlines. One article called him one of the most influential business leaders in the country. Another listed his estimated net worth in the billions. Savannah stared in disbelief. Her pulse hammered in her ears. This could not be real. Yet there he was. Declan stepped to the podium and began speaking about education programs, housing initiatives, and family support services. The audience listened with admiration. Savannah barely heard a word. Every conversation they had shared replayed inside her mind. Every visit, every smile, every moment. Suddenly, countless unanswered questions made sense. The expensive watch he never talked about. The luxury SUV. The way people occasionally stared at him in public. The confidence. The resources. The mysterious schedule. He had never been an ordinary man. Not even close. When the presentation ended, guests surrounded the stage. Savannah stepped backward. Her chest felt tight. Confused emotions collided inside her. Shock. Embarrassment. Betrayal. Had any of it been real? Had he been helping her because he cared, or because she was some charity project? Before she could decide, she saw him scanning the crowd. Searching. Then his eyes found hers. Across the ballroom, Declan's expression changed instantly. The confident billionaire disappeared. For a brief second, he looked exactly like the man standing in her apartment kitchen holding a bag of groceries. Savannah saw recognition, concern, and something else. Regret. Neither moved. The noise of the ballroom seemed to fade away. Then Savannah took a step backward. And another. Declan started toward her immediately. But by the time he reached the crowd, she was already gone. The drive home felt longer than usual. Savannah barely remembered leaving the hotel. The city lights blurred beyond the windshield while the same question repeated endlessly inside her mind. Why did he not tell me? By the time she reached her apartment, her neighbor had already put Lily to sleep. Savannah thanked her quietly and stepped inside. The familiar sight of the tiny living room should have comforted her. Instead, every corner reminded her of Declan. The repaired heater, the stuffed rabbit, the bakery box still sitting on the counter. She sank onto the couch and covered her face with her hands. A billionaire. Not successful. Not wealthy. A billionaire. The difference felt impossible to ignore. Her phone buzzed. One message. Declan, can we talk? Savannah stared at the screen for a long moment before locking the phone without replying. 5 minutes later, another message appeared. Please. She ignored that one too. The following morning, she woke exhausted. She focused on work. On Lily. On anything except the growing knot in her chest. Yet throughout the day, memories kept resurfacing. The way Declan listened when she spoke. The way he remembered small details. The way Lily smiled whenever he walked into the room. None of those moments felt fake. That was what made everything hurt more. 2 days passed. Then 3. Declan sent only a few messages. Never demanding. Never angry. Just patient. I hope you are okay. Tell Lily I found another rabbit at the store. I miss talking to you. Savannah read every message and answered none of them. On the 4th evening, she returned home after work and froze. Declan was sitting on the front steps outside her building. He stood immediately when he saw her. Neither spoke at first. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the sidewalk. Finally, Savannah crossed her arms. You should not be here. Probably not. Then why are you? Declan looked directly at her. Because you would not answer my calls. Maybe that should tell you something. The words landed. Harder than she intended. Declan nodded slowly. It does. For a few seconds, silence stretched between them. Then Savannah shook her head. Do you have any idea how humiliating that felt? Humiliating. Standing in that ballroom and realizing everyone knew who you were except me. Declan's expression tightened. Savannah, I told you things. Her voice trembled slightly. I told you about my fears. My finances. My daughter. My entire life. And I told you mine. Not the biggest part. Declan looked away briefly before speaking. You are right. The admission surprised her. No excuses. No arguments. Just honesty. Then why? She asked quietly. Why keep it from me? Declan exhaled slowly. Because the moment people learn who I am, everything changes. Savannah remained silent. I have spent years wondering whether people like me or what comes with me, he continued. The money, the influence, the opportunities. His voice softened. You were different. Savannah felt her anger falter slightly. Different how? You texted a stranger because your daughter needed formula. He gave a small, sad smile. You did not ask for a job. You did not ask for a favor. You did not ask for a miracle. He met her eyes again. And when I helped, you handed me a repayment note. Savannah remembered the piece of paper immediately. Declan reached into his wallet and carefully unfolded it. The edges were slightly worn now. Most people would have thrown this away. Why did you keep it? She asked. His answer came without hesitation. Because it reminded me that good people still exist. Savannah looked at the paper, then at him. For the first time since the gala, she saw not the billionaire from the stage, but the man who had knocked on her door carrying formula in the middle of the night. The man who made Lily laugh. The man who showed up. Yet the hurt had not disappeared completely. You should have trusted me enough to tell the truth, she said. Declan nodded. I know. The honesty in his voice made it difficult to stay angry. As the evening light faded around them, neither seemed ready to walk away. But neither knew how to move forward either. Over the following month, the distance between Savannah and Declan slowly disappeared. Not because the questions had all been answered, but because both of them chose to keep showing up. Declan no longer hid who he was. He spoke openly about his companies, his responsibilities, and the pressure that came with living under constant public attention. Savannah listened without judgment. In return, she shared the fear she had carried for years. The fear of failing Lily. The fear of never getting ahead, no matter how hard she worked. The fear of depending on someone and losing them. One evening, while Lily slept nearby, Savannah looked across the couch and asked, "Do you ever wish you could just be ordinary?" Declan laughed softly. Almost every day. Really, you would be surprised how exhausting it is when people already have an opinion about you before you say a single word. Savannah considered that. I guess I did that too. At the gala? She nodded. At the gala. Declan smiled. Fair enough. Life continued. Work remained busy. Bills still existed. But something fundamental had changed. They had become part of each other's daily routines. Morning messages. Shared meals. Walks through the neighborhood park with Lily in her stroller. For the first time in years, Savannah found herself looking forward to the future instead of simply surviving the present. Then, one afternoon, Declan asked if she could attend a foundation event with him. Another gala? Savannah asked suspiciously. Technically. That answer makes me nervous. You will be fine. You always say that. Because you are always fine. The event took place 6 weeks later in a large downtown convention center. Hundreds of guests filled the ballroom. Community leaders, business executives, journalists, volunteers. Savannah felt nervous the moment she arrived. Yet Declan seemed unusually calm, almost excited. What are you hiding? She asked. Nothing. That was a terrible answer. His smile widened. Just trust me. The evening progressed through speeches and presentations. Then the master of ceremonies stepped onto the stage. Tonight we are proud to announce a new initiative focused on helping single parents facing emergency financial hardship. Applause filled the room. Savannah listened politely. Programs like this mattered. She knew that firsthand. The inspiration for this project came from a simple act that reminded us how quickly a life can change when someone chooses compassion. Declan glanced toward her. Suddenly Savannah felt uneasy. The large screens behind the stage lit up. A familiar image appeared. A photograph of a folded piece of paper. Savannah's breath caught instantly. It was her repayment note. The exact note she had written in the middle of the night. The room fell silent. Several months ago, the speaker continued. Our founder received a message from a struggling mother asking to borrow $50 for baby formula. Savannah stared in disbelief. Around the ballroom, guests listened intently. Declan stepped onto the stage and accepted the microphone. For a moment, he simply looked at the image behind him. I have completed billion-dollar transactions, he said quietly. I have signed contracts worth more money than most people can imagine. The audience listened carefully. But this piece of paper remains one of the most valuable things I own. Savannah felt tears gathering in her eyes. Because it reminded me that dignity matters. Integrity matters. And kindness matters. He looked directly at her. The woman who wrote this note thought she owed me money. A few people laughed softly. The truth is that I owe her far more. The crowd turned toward Savannah as realization spread through the room. Her face flushed immediately. Tonight, after unanimous approval from our foundation board, we are proud to launch the Savannah Promise Fund. Declan announced. A program dedicated to helping single parents navigate emergency situations before they become impossible crises. The ballroom erupted into applause. Savannah sat frozen. Overwhelmed, emotional, speechless. And in that moment, she finally understood that the most important thing Declan had ever given her was never the groceries, the formula, or the financial support. It was the belief that her hardest night could become the beginning of something beautiful. 1 year later, the city was wrapped in the gentle warmth of early spring. The Savannah Promise Fund had grown beyond anything either of them imagined. Thousands of families had received emergency assistance. Parents who once faced impossible choices now had support when they needed it most. Every success story reminded Savannah of a rainy night and a message sent in desperation. Life looked very different now. She had accepted a leadership role within the foundation, helping design programs that focused on dignity instead of charity. Lily was no longer a baby. She was a bright, energetic toddler who filled every room with laughter and endless questions. And Declan remained exactly where he had been since that first night when everything changed. Beside them, not because he had to be, because he wanted to be. On a quiet Friday evening, Savannah returned home after a long day of meetings. The apartment building was no longer the same one she had lived in before. Thanks to her new position, she and Lily now lived in a comfortable townhouse filled with sunlight, books, and photographs. Yet some habits never changed. She still checked on Lily first. She still made tea before bed. And she still paused occasionally to appreciate how far they had come. As she entered the living room, she noticed something unusual. The lights were dimmed. Small candles glowed across the room. Soft music drifted through the air. Savannah smiled immediately. "Declan," she called. No answer. Then she spotted a note resting on the coffee table. Her heart began to race. The note contained only a time. 10:50 p.m. She stared at it for several seconds before laughing softly. She knew that time. She would never forget it. Hours later, after Lily had fallen asleep, Savannah followed a trail of handwritten notes leading through the house. Each note described a moment from the past year. The first message she ever received. The first meal they shared. The first time Lily said Declan's name. The first foundation office. The first successful family helped through the program. Every memory brought tears to her eyes. The final note led her outside to the backyard garden. String lights glowed above the trees. The evening air felt calm and perfect. Declan stood waiting beneath the lights. In his hands was a small frame. Savannah immediately recognized it. The repayment note. The same note she had written at her kitchen table in the middle of the night. The paper was carefully preserved behind glass. She laughed through her tears. "You still have it?" "Of course I do." He stepped closer. "It changed my life." Savannah looked at the note and shook her head. "It was a repayment plan." "No," Declan said softly. "It was proof that kindness and integrity still exist." For a moment neither spoke. The garden remained silent around them. Then Declan turned the frame around. Written on the back was a new message. Savannah read the words slowly. "Debt forgiven. Marry me instead." Her hand flew to her mouth. Before she could say anything, Declan lowered himself onto one knee. "You once told me that the most important thing I ever did was show up," he said quietly. "The truth is that you saved me long before I helped you. You reminded me what matters. You reminded me what family feels like." His voice softened. "Savannah Pierce, will you marry me?" Tears streamed down her face as she nodded. "Yes," she whispered. Then louder. "Yes." Before either of them could move, tiny footsteps padded across the wooden deck. Lily hugged her stuffed rabbit tightly and looked up at Savannah with sleepy eyes. "Mama," she asked softly, "is Declan staying with us forever?" For a heartbeat, nobody spoke. Savannah's eyes filled with fresh tears. Declan smiled through his own emotions and knelt a little lower to meet Lily's eyes. "If your mama says yes," he said gently, "I hope so." Lily broke into the biggest smile. "Good," she said, "because he already feels like family." Laughter filled the garden. Declan stood and pulled Savannah into a hug while Lily wrapped her tiny arms around both of them. Beneath the lights, surrounded by the family they had built together, Savannah realized something beautiful. The most important moments in life rarely arrive the way we expect. Sometimes they begin with uncertainty, sometimes with struggle, sometimes with a simple message sent to the wrong number. And sometimes, if you are very lucky, they end with exactly the right person showing up when you need them most. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe to the Billionaire's Choice. Every week, we bring you heartwarming stories of love, destiny, and life-changing decisions. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a new story.